So the translation to the first verse is, the place where Devahūti achieved her perfection, my dear Vidura, is understood to be a most sacred spot. It is known all over the three worlds as Siddhapada. Text 32. Tasyas tad yoga vidhuta martyam abut sarit shrotashyang pravara samya siddha sevata. My dear Vidura, the material elements of her body have melted into the water, and now a flowing river, which is the most sacred of all rivers, and it is now the most sacred of all rivers. Anyone who bathes in that river also attains perfection, and therefore all persons who desire perfection go to bathe there. Text 33. Kapilo pi mahayogi bhagavan pitur as ramat pataram samanudyapi rag udit ching dishang yayau. My dear Vidura, the great sage Kapila, the personality of Godhead, left his father's hermitage with the permission of his mother and went towards the northeast. And then the last verse. Siddhapada Gandharvas Manuvish Chap Saroganahi Stu Yamana Samudrena Datarhana Neke Tanaha. While he was passing in the northern direction, all the celestial denizens known as Cāraṇas and Gandharvas, as well as the munis and the damsels of the heavenly planets, paid and offered him all respects. The ocean offered him oblations and a place of residence. Purport. It is understood that Kapila Muni first went towards the Himalayas and traced out the course of the river Ganges. And he again came to the delta of the Ganges at the sea known as the Bay of Bengal. The ocean gave him a residence at a place still known as Ganga Sagar, where the river Ganges meets the sea. That place is called Ganga Sagara Tirtha, and even today people gather there to offer respects to Kapila Dev, the original author of the Sankhya system of philosophy. Now this next sentence is going to be what the whole lecture is about. And the last sentence is, unfortunately, this Sankhya system has been misrepresented by an impostor who is also named Kapila. But that other system of philosophy does not tally with anything described in the Sankhya of Kapila in the Srimad-Bhagavatam. Om Ajnana Timirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. So I trust you can all see the slides here. This first slide is Srila Vyasadeva giving his blessings to Madhva in the form of a commentary on the Vedanta. So the Vedanta Sutras are referred to as the Vedasar, or the essence of all the Vedas. And the Srimad-Bhagavatam is Galitam Palam. It's a ripened fruit. It's the essence of everything, including the Vedanta. And this has to be received in the cyclic succession, otherwise the teachings are broken, and that we see. I'm going to again repeat the last sentence of the last purport. You guys can see. Okay. So, Srila Prabhupada says that unfortunately Sankhya has been misrepresented by an impostor who is also named Kapila, and that other system of philosophy does not tally with anything described in the Sankhya of Kapila and the Srimad-Bhagavatam. So, you think about this. Yes, the Sankhya system in its present form is misrepresented. And the impostor, this gets a little bit more complicated. What I understand is being referred to here is what's called the Sankhya Karika, which is a commentary by a sage of the name Ishvara Krishna, which is pretty funny because it has nothing to do with Ishvara Krishna, but that was his name. And it's a commentary of the philosophy of Sankhya by someone who's referred to as Kapila. And he says that it doesn't tally with anything that the Kapila Devahūti Putra presented. Actually, it does tally with almost everything but the most important thing, because it doesn't mention God or what to speak of devotional service to the Lord. So therefore the purpose of Sankhya is lost, and so it's useless, it's impotent. It's just like Srila Prabhupada would use the example of a show bottle. Like, for instance, if you have some very expensive perfume, costs hundreds of dollars, you're not going to waste it by putting it in the window. Usually it'll be colored water and it'll look like the same thing, but it has none of the potency. It's just colored water to appear like that. So although the meaning of many of these things in the present day Sankhya will be very similar or exactly the same as what you find in Kapila Dev's presentation of Sankhya, because it's missing the most essential point. Therefore, it's been polluted, made impotent. Although there's more things in Sankhya today, there's more things that are similar than that are different. So we're going to go over that. So the question is, if it's impotent, if it's done by an atheist impostor, why study it? So I want to reference to Srimad-Bhagavatam Canto 1, Chapter 1, Text 7. So right in the beginning of the Bhagavatam we find this, in the purport to 117. Srimad-Bhagavatam is the natural commentation on the Brahma Sutra, or the Bhadarayana Vedanta Sutras. It is called natural because Vyasadeva is the author of both Vedanta Sutras and Srimad-Bhagavatam, or the essence of all Vedic literatures. Besides Vyasadeva, there are other sages who are the authors of 6 different philosophical systems, namely Gautama, Kanada, Kapila. So this Kapila that's being referred to here is not Devahūti Putra. It's not the personality of Godhead. This is the so-called atheist Kapila. So Gautama, Kanada, Kapila, Patanjali, Jaimini, and Astavaka. Theism is explained completely in the Vedanta Sutras, whereas in the other systems of philosophical speculations, practically no mention is given to the ultimate cause of all causes. This is a very important statement. Let me read it again. Practically no mention is given to the ultimate cause of all causes. We'll come back to that. One can sit on the Vyasasana only after being conversant in all systems of philosophy, so that one can fully present the theistic views of the Bhagavatam in defiance of all other systems. So let's go back to this. The other systems may mention in passing, or may not, the cause of all causes. So this is very important to understand, because there are so many theories about causality. We don't think about it so much in our day-to-day life, but I mean, There's universal flux. There's the void theory of illusion, that what is in front of our face is just appears to be real, but it's actually not. There's atomic theory. There's a theory about subtle energies, just like there's a Big Bang. It's an eternal singularity that all phenomena burst out of and cause the existence of what we see now, but it's gradually evolving until it reverts back to the singularity. So there's all these different views that either we hold dearly or we're influenced by. So we have to know what our audience is, what we agree on, and what falls short of what the absolute truth is. So everybody's on different levels. And I think that Srila Prabhupada emphasized the need for the Varnashram system, reestablishing Varnashram Dharma. And he would also call Varnashram Dharma is Sanatana Dharma. So why is that? What does that mean? Does it mean that we're just talking about farms, or that we're just talking about Varnashram, reestablishing the Varnas in the ashrams? It's that, but it also means that we need to find a way that we can preach to people on their level and then engage them accordingly. So that was the first slide. Now I'm going to go to the second slide. Just one second. Let's see, am I recording this? Yeah, okay. Screen here. Okay. All right, so second slide. So, as I mentioned before, yesterday I think I mentioned before, and in previous times, that we have a newsletter. A whole bunch of people get it, and periodically we've been doing a series on the Saddarshans based on a work of the late Sahotra Swami. So I take his work as the basis, and I derive information from other sources as well. So one of those Saddarshans, or 6 systems of philosophy, is Sankhya. So we're going to discuss that. Now we'll go to slide 3. Okay, so briefly, not to be overwhelmed, but just quickly to go through this, that there's 2 systems. One is Astika and Nastika. So Gnostics are those philosophies that have nothing to do with the Vedas. Culturally, they appear the same because it comes from India. So you got the same, it looks like Hindus, that have temple worship and, the same kind of rituals and puja and all this. So it's like, for an outsider to look at them, they're all Hindus. No, they're not. These are Gnostics. These are the Buddhists, the Jains, the Charvaks, etc., that are completely outside following the Veda. They're concocted their own ways and means of so-called self-realization. Then there's the Astic. The Astic are the theistic, orthodox followers of the Veda. They use the Veda as the basis of everything they do and they understand. So let's go to the next slide. Slide 4. Yes. Okay, so 6 systems of philosophy, Saddarshans. So why are the Saddarshans called theistic? Because you'll notice one of those is Sankhya, and Sankhya, we just heard, has been polluted, and it comes from an imposter, Kapila. So why is it still listed as under the Sanatana Dharma, or under the authority of the Vedas? Because the 6 Darshans are either directly explaining the text of the Veda or derived from the import of the Vedas. So Astik, or follower of the Veda, is also called Sanatana Dharma. And the reason is because the whole theme of the Vedic literature is to raise the most pitiful, primitive human being to the most elevated stage, wherever you are, to start there and gradually bring them up the Varnashram system. And the Vedas are meant to take from wherever you are and bring you up. So the Saddarshans were meant for that. So if you look at this, I mean, we've got 6 systems, starting with Nyaya. Nyaya is grounded in logic and reason. And then from there's Vaishesika, which is talks or introduces what is this world, what is the gross matter that we can perceive. And then Sankhya introduces subtle matter beyond that. And finally, there's an introduction to the self, to the spirit. And then yoga is to pull the mind away from matter and to help one realize his self by controlling the mind. And then the Purva Mimamsa introduces the living entity, those who are struggling to understand what the absolute truth is, introduces them to worship. It's mentioned in one sloka. Ishvara is mentioned in one sloka in the Yoga Sutras. But so in the Purva Mimamsa, even if there's worship of demigods, at least there's an understanding. There's controllers of this universe, and you need to worship them. That's Purva Mimamsa. And then Uttara Mimamsa is a Vedanta. This is the culmination of the Upanishads. Purva means before, discussions before. This is talking mainly about the Upanishads, the philosophical portions of the Vedas. And then the Uttara means after discussion. So this is the culmination of the Upanishads, or the Vedanta Sutras, and they discuss the absolute truth both as impersonal and personal. So that's the culmination. So let's go to the next slide, which is slide 5. So you have these Ashtik schools, and they're called Sanatana Dharma because they're meant to lift the living entity from whatever lowest position he is to the highest position gradually. So it's not so much like different schools of thought, although it is that in one sense, but it's more like, if you look at mathematics, you start with arithmetic, you go to algebra, trigonometry, and calculus, you just keep on going. So one is built upon the other. You've got the grounding of logic, the understanding what this world is made of, the gross material elements, and then Sankhya to help you understand what is spirit and what are the most subtler aspects in yoga, and just builds up like that till you get to the culmination of Vedanta. So that's kind of like, it's a progression. Okay, and then we'll go to, oh, I'm sorry. And then one more thing about this. But Srila Prabhupada mentions that the present Sankhya in its present form is polluted. So that is absolutely true. It's been misinterpreted because it lost the essential potent nature of it, which is devotional service. So now we'll go to slide 6. Again, there's going to be like 20 slides, so I hope we can get through this in the time that we have. Okay, so to understand further what we're talking about as far as the present day Sankhya, it comes from what's called the Sankhya Sutras, which are no longer in existence. We only know of them, but there is no such thing anymore, which can be referred to as the Sankhya Sutras. They've been lost in time. So, and that is, these sutras were traditionally attributed to the atheist, Kapila. And the only reason we even know about this is because the earliest Sanskrit text available that describes the Sankhya Sutras is the Sankhya Karika, which is written by this Ishvara Krishna. Ishvara Krishna does not mention at all Ishvara in his commentary on the Sankhya Sutras. And then we have Sri Vachaspati Mishra. He commented with the Tattva Kaumudi on the Sankhya Karika. And this Tattva Kaumudi, it was written in the 9th or the 10th century. So you see, over the thousands of years, it's just been lost. Whatever they're interpreting as Sankhya has been misrepresented by perhaps people that have other motives. So when it refers to, when Srila Prabhupada refers to the atheist Kapila, usually if we hear the word atheist, it really conjures up strong emotions. An atheist means someone who is envious of, who has hatred toward the word God. They become vehement, almost like spitting from their mouth. That's an atheist. So I would prefer to use the word non-theist when it comes to Sankhya philosophy in its present form, because it has either no knowledge of or no consideration of God as the Ishvara, as the controller. All right, so now we go to slide 7. So just as in the Bhagavad Gita, there are 5 different subject matters. There is Ishvara, there's the Purusha or the Jiva. So Ishvara, Purusha, Prakriti, Kala, and then Karma. Those are the 5 subjects of the Bhagavad Gita. So similarly, those who commented on the Sankhya Sutras, they emphasized 5 main points, and those are listed here. We have cause and effect, Prakriti and Purusha, evolution of the universe, liberation, their conception of it, and then the theory of knowledge. So to go over all of these things in a half-hour period would be impossible and wouldn't do justice to it, nor is it even really necessary. But we're just going to touch briefly on this so we can have an understanding of what's there. So first is the cause and the effect. So this is extremely important, and this is the only subject that we're going to spend a little bit of time on because it is so important. It's the theory of causality, or what is their conception of the cause of all causes. Prakriti and Purusha we'll touch on a little bit. It's the conception that Prakriti is the unconscious principle, whereas the Purusha is the unchanging conscious principle. In other words, the soul, the first introduction to the soul, whereas Prakriti, actually Prakriti means exceptional ability, Prakriti. So the wonderful permutations, ever-changing nature of the material nature, and its essence is the gunas, the 3 modes of material nature, which are actually the ultimate cause of all effects in this world. Then there's evolution of the universe, which we're not going to have time to go over, but we have covered it in the Srimad-Bhagavatam, so it should be familiar to everyone. And then liberation, freedom from suffering and misery, that also we're fully aware of. And then the theory of knowledge. These things are also familiar to us. However, it's important to go over this a little bit more at the end, because later followers of Sankhya, they had to admit, they had to accept that there must be God. There's a concept of God there because they were defeated. They had to admit that their theories have no logical way to deny the existence of God. So, slide 8. So Sankhya is the summing up of both Nyaya and Vaishesika. It takes logic and the theory, the understanding of what makes up the gross elements of this world, and fuses those 2 fundamental principles together with the Purusha and the Prakriti. So but they did it with the exclusion of Ishvara. That's not in their system. So therefore it's called Nir Ishvara Sankhya. And Nir Ishvara Sankhya, even though it's a non-theistic Sankhya, still it's Dvaita. It's a dualistic philosophy, as opposed to Advaita, like the impersonalists. So slide 9. I hope I haven't lost anybody. I know there's a lot of heavy philosophy. Okay, so we're just going to go over this portion of their main focus, the 5 main topics, cause and effect, in a little bit more detail. Because it's the grounds for non-theistic Sankhya theory, cause and effect. Because if you think about it, it's like, why are we here? And what is the world around us? And what purpose does all of this have? You know, if you think about it, it's like our whole paradigm or our purpose to life is based on this. But the thing is that most people don't think about it all the time, unless you're a philosopher. Being influenced by or accepting what is the ultimate cause influences the reasoning we have behind everything. Because if there is no cause, if there's no purpose to life, if this life is all there is and after that there's just void, then better to grab all the gusto you can get and just go out and drink another beer. What's the purpose of it all? But of course we know there is a cause and there is consequences for not obeying the laws of nature and wasting this human form of life. So go to slide 10. This is a warning. The next 3 slides, if I can keep everybody's attention for the next 3 slides, then we'll be okay. It's like be over the hump. This is like at the top of the hill. This is where it starts to get highly philosophical, and I hope I don't lose everybody like this. But if we can just get through these next 3 slides. So to understand Sankhya, we have to understand that Indian philosophy has 2 large divisions. One is called Satkaryavada. Vada means like a philosophy. So it's got something called Satkaryavad and Asatkaryavad. So Satkaryavada means the philosophy of this world. There exists before us effects, and the cause of those effects, that cause, prior to the production of its effects, the effects were in the cause. Whereas the opposite, Asatkaryavad, says that the effects do not exist in the cause prior to its manifestation. So in order to understand this, I put some pictures together that I thought would be easier to grasp this. So if you think about like a tree, it comes from a seed, just like Krishna says, Bijam avyayam, I am the eternal seed. Within that seed is the potency of a tree, which that tree will also have the potency to create more seeds, create more seeds, like that, on infinitely. So Krishna says, Bijam avyayam, I am the eternal seed. So the potency of the effect is within the cause already. That is Satkaryavad. So Sankhya accepts Satkaryavad. Unfortunately, it falls short because it says the origin or the cause is Prakriti. They don't go far, and after that they don't go any farther to the cause of all causes. Whereas Asatkaryavad says that prior to the effect there is no cause. So I know this is kind of a mind twister, but their doctrine is that of non-existent effects. Now, I know that it sounds like it doesn't make any sense, and it doesn't. But anyway, it's called non-existent effects. There are certain known and unknown forces that act together to produce a new thing out of the old material. So, to give an example, just like you have earth, Portland cement, and then you mix it with water and fire, or you subject it to heat, what do you get? You get a brick. But what they'll point out, the followers of Asatkaryavad, is that you cannot find the brick in the earth, the fire, and the water. It's just a new thing. So this is the same philosophy as you will find for those that are only exposed to or followers of Nyaya and Vaishesika. Another name for this, if you're watching the slides here, it's called Arambhavada, which Arambha means a new beginning. So it's like this. If you see there's a picture here of a flame. Flame, even though it appears to be an object, it's always changing. So it's not just one object, it's constantly changing objects. So therefore, it's not really a thing, but it's simply a change. The example that they give is just like cloth. A cloth is made up of the bringing together in some fashion of threads. And you put it all together and you get a cloth. But cloth is not within the effects. In other words, the thread by themselves does not cause the cloth. And they give a proof for this, is that if you show, a spool of thread or just, thread all wound up to a baby, or like, let's say, a naked aborigine who has never been exposed to clothing, he's not going to know what that is when he sees a spool of thread or tangled yarn. He doesn't see the cloth in it. So this shows that what we're seeing, by being exposed to cloth is illusory. It's a artificial imposition. Rather, the Buddhists, their understanding of cause is that of flux. It's universal flux. Nothing can be called the cause because nothing remains after the effect. Once you take thread and you make it into cloth, it's no longer string, it's a cloth. It changed into something else. So nothing can be called an effect because the result of the change after that is another change. So there's no cause and there's no effect. There's only change, or in other words, transformation. That's the only thing that they see, is simply change, no cause, no effect. And they want void, and that's what they get. That's what their conception is. Okay, so we'll go to the next slide. So there are two schools of Satkaryavad. Again, this is important to understand, because we'll recognize one of these schools as Vivartavad. Vivartavad, if you're not familiar with the term, it's what the Mayavadi's entire philosophy is based on, whereas Parinamavad is the other school of Satkaryavad. Vivartavad and Parinamavad. Parinamavad is what all the Vaishnavacharyas follow and establish as the grounds for their understanding of the world. Parinamavad. So it's also followed by Sankhya-vad. So the Vedantists, the so-called Vedantists, the Advaita school, they see that all transformations of cause into effects are merely apparent. And then the famous example of that is a snake. A snake, you think it's a snake, but actually it's a rope. A rope in the snake. So if you see a snake in the rope in a dark room, then it's not true. It simply appears to be true. So that's what they're saying about the effects of this world. They appear to be true, and therefore there appears to be a manifestation before us, but actually it's all illusion. And it's a basis for everything that they explain about what is God, what's the universe, what we are. It's all based on this philosophy of Vivarta, illusion. That God, the universe, the individual souls, these are all illusions. They simply appear to be there, but once we go back to the source, which is Brahman, which has no qualities, which is void in essence, and therefore the illusion will disappear. That's called Vivartavad, the Mayavad philosophy. Whereas Sankhya says that no, that when there's transformation, there's a real effect that's taking place coming from the cause. So the example here, as you can see, is there's a chair. So wood is a transformation of a chair. The Mayavadis will say that it's simply an illusion of a chair. But does that make sense? No, wood actually has been transformed into something else. It has been transformed into a chair. And this is important for us to understand. Just like it says in the Vedanta Sutras, in the first verse of the Srimad-Bhagavatam, Janmadya Shayataha, that the Absolute Truth is a source from which everything comes. He's the source of all effects, all emanations. So everything that comes, all the effects that come from the cause are actually transformations. But it goes a little bit further than that. We know this. Maybe Sankhya, non-theistic Sankhya doesn't understand this, but we understand by the grace of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Achintya Veda Veda Tattva, that Parasya Shaktir Vividaya Shruyate. What's actually transformed is not the cause of all causes, but it's the intermediary cause. It's a transformation of the energies, and this is called not Parinamavad exactly, but Shakti Parinamavad. Shakti means energy. It means the energy of the Lord has transformed into something else. Okay, I hope that makes sense to all of you. So what is this world? What are the effects? So that's what's stated in the Bhagavad Gita. That's why I'm kind of like, pounding on this point, because we need to understand how this is part of our philosophy. Parinamavad opposed to Vivartavad. Just like Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita. He says, Udva Mulam Adashaka. Udva means going up. So what is this world? It's just like a banyan tree with the roots going up and the branches going down. So where do you find that? Obviously, we're talking about a reflection. A reflection means there's something real on the other side. So that's why Parinamavad is embraced by all Vaishnava Sampradayas. It's very, very important. Okay, now we go to slide 12. So this is it. We're at the top of the hill here. This is the hardest slide probably to understand, because in order to establish this philosophy, the Sankhya philosophy of Parinamavad, or that cause actually changes into its effects, there are 5 basic arguments. So if we can get through this, it'll be smooth sailing after this. So if you can just stay with me. So central to the whole system of near Ishvara, or Sankhya in general, is the premise that effects exist in the material cause even before it's produced. So for this, there are 5 different arguments. So the 5 are, first of all, there's asat karanat. Asat karanat means that the effect exists in the cause before its creation. So if you're looking at the slide here, the first slide, what it means is that if you were to take the color blue, you cannot get yellow out of it. The same with milk. If you want to produce a chair from milk, it just won't happen. How come? Because yellow does not exist in blue. It's one of the primary colors. You just can't do it. You can get different shades of blue or some other color, but you'll never get yellow. Same with a chair. A chair will not, you're not going to be able to get out of milk because a chair is not within the milk. Similarly, you're not going to get the effects unless they are there within the cause. So that's called asat karanat. The second argument is called upadana grahanat, which means that because there is an invariable relationship between the cause and the effect, the cause can only produce an effect that is causally related to it. So what that means is, like, for instance, we have a picture here, that milk can only produce yogurt. How come it can produce yogurt? It's because the cause, milk, alone is related to yogurt. It's not going to produce a chair. It's going to produce yogurt because of the relationship. If the effect, or in other words, yogurt, if the effect is, for instance, you want to get a chair does not exist in any way before its production. If it's not there in the milk, then it's impossible for the effect to be related to the cause. You can get you can get yogurt out of milk, but you can't get a chair out of milk. There's no causal relationship. That's the second argument. The third argument, that if the effect has to be in the cause, and that effect has to be causally related to the cause, the effect has to be causally related to its original cause, then sarva sangbhava bhavat is a fixed rule of production, or in other words, manifestation of things, that certain things can be produced only out of certain other things. In other words, just like we have the picture here, you can't get blood out of a stone. It can't be produced. You just can't take anything and produce something else out of it. It has to be related to that other thing, and it has to be within that thing. It's impossibility to get blood out of a stone, for instance. It proves the existence that there are particular causes, particular things that cause another thing. So that's the third argument. See, these arguments build one thing upon the other. I mean, that's a scientific process. The fourth argument is called Saktasya. So Shakti means potency, energy. So Shaktasya, of that energy, Shakya Cāraṇas. What that means is that the effect exists in its cause in an unmanifested form before it produces an effect. Or in other words, more simple language, that the cause has to be potent in order to produce an effect. So it's just like this. You see here, there's seeds of a tree. If those seeds have the potency or the energy to produce other trees. But if you take those seeds and you fry them, then you remove their potency. Therefore, the effect must be potentially contained in its subtle form within the cause. So it's stated that potentiality of cause cannot be related to an effect if the effect does not exist in that particular cause in some form. And a simpler way to look at it is like this. The example is given just like you cannot get milk from the nipples of a goat. They look like nipples on a cow, but if you try and squeeze them, no milk is going to come out because there's no Shakti, there's no potency there. The potency has to be there, so that shows the presence of an energy in its unmanifested form. What we see is the manifestation, the effect. Okay, and then the last argument is Karana Bhavat, which means that if an effect doesn't exist in the cause, then how can a non-existent world come into existence out of nothing? In other words, how can you produce something out of nothing, out of like thin air? If there is no cause, then how can you get an effect? That's the point. So if you put all this together, if the effect is within the cause and the effect has to be related to the cause, and you can't just get any effect out of any cause, and that cause has to have the potency of the effect in its unmanifested form, then that means that you can't get something out of nothing. The universe just can't pop in out of void. It can't pop in out of nothing. So that's the conclusion of that Karana Bhavat. So all of these things, they build one upon another. You can't just produce something out of thin air. If somebody does something like that, usually it's called magic. And magic, you're getting cheated. It's an illusion. It looks real, but it actually has no substance whatsoever. Somebody's cheating. Okay, let's go to the next slide. So in summary, about these arguments of Sankhya, because that's how they establish their entire theory of Parinamavad, which is our understanding as well. It establishes, Parinama says, that all effects exist in their unmanifested form in some way in the cause. So the example is just like a tortoise. A tortoise, it extends its limbs from its shell. The tortoise, it doesn't create the limbs. The limbs are part of him, but it merely brings it from its hidden form into its manifested form. So similarly, nobody can say that they can convert something that's non-existent into something that is existent. Similarly, I'm sorry, I lost my notes. Hold on. Oh yeah, that was the other point. Therefore, anything that's created means it can also never be destroyed. That was the other point. So you can't create something out of nothing, and something that exists can never be destroyed. Okay, so let's go to the next slide. This is slide 14. Again, we've got 20 slides, so we're getting there. Now it should be not so difficult. Okay, so again, these are the 5 main points. And we're just going to briefly go through the others. So that was cause and effects. Now we go to Prakriti and Purusha, also as part of Sankhya. So Prakriti is the unconscious principle, and the Purusha is the conscious principle. Or in other words, it includes the mind and the intellect and the ego, but of course those are material nature. But it refers to the soul, the conscious being. So other schools of philosophy, they recognize gross matter as a cause. This would mean like Charvak, he is an atheist. Buddhism, Jainism, and also Nyaya, logic, and Vaishesika, or just atomic theory. It only deals with gross matter. But Sankhya introduces the concept that gross matter alone is not enough. You need something subtler to produce a subtler element, such as the mind and the intelligence and the ego. So the cause has to be subtler than the associated effect. And also that cause has to be all-pervading. It's within everything. And that we've certainly learned from Sankhya. So the example is just like you have the seed of a tree. Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, he says, Bija mam sarva bhutanam, that I am the original seed of all existences. So, but Sankhya, unfortunately, in its present form, it says that the ultimate cause is Prakriti, or actually the gunas. That's where it goes. So the ultimate cause is gunas, because the gunas are intrinsic within the Prakriti. The universe has, in their concept, has evolved from the 3 gunas, which is true, but there's things coming before that they don't discuss. Prakriti means when the 3 modes of material nature are in equilibrium. That is called Prakriti. When they're in balance. When they're out of balance, when they're disturbed, that is called Vikriti. When there is Vikriti, or a mixture of the modes, that's a heterogeneous, sorry, I'm not real familiar with this word, but a heterogeneous state. Heterogeneous means unlimited mixtures, permutations of the material nature, all the variety that we see around us in this world. It's due to Vikriti, or an unbalancing, a mixture of the modes of nature. So the 3 gunas are the ultimate cause of the creation. Although they are the cause, we should know that they are essentially different, goodness, passion, and ignorance, but at the same time they're all interrelated. The example is just like if you have a lamp. A lamp is made up of what? It's made up of oil, a wick, and a flame. So all of these 3 things, the oil, the wick, and the flame, they all work together to produce light. Similarly, the gunas, they cooperate to produce all the objects or the effects in this world. And the gunas, they're constantly changing. They're transforming from one thing to another. But until they ultimately come to a state of perfect balance. And this is what is called Prakriti. Whereas the Purusha is the conscious self. It's the spirit, the first introduction to spirit that's trapped in this ever-flowing permutations of this world, the stream of changes. And it feels itself in a foreign nature being subjected to pains and pleasures. And the goal, let's see, oops, I'm sorry, I need to go to the next slide. So that's a little understanding of Prakriti and Purusha. Now the rest we're not going to spend a whole lot of time with. Evolution, that was covered very nicely in the last chapters of Lord Kapila Dev's Sankhya. It's the same, practically the same, except it starts with the three modes, and that the world evolves from the interaction of Prakriti and Purusha. And then we go to the next slide, slide 17. The last point of central point of their philosophy is that as the sources of valid knowledge, and these are also the same as ours. And that's that Sankhya accepts that there are three independent sources of knowledge which we can accept as proof. Proof is called pramana. So pramana, there's three: pratyaksha, anuman, and shabda. So we're already familiar with that. Pratyaksha is what you can see in front of your face. It's sense perception. Anuman is inference, and shabda means testimony from others. So those are considered to be valid knowledge. And then, I'm sorry, this is the last slide. Excuse me. Liberation. Their concept of liberation is that both the Prakriti and the Purusha, they're infinite and eternal. There's unlimited Purushas, and the Prakriti is one, but it's eternal along with the Purusha. But that the universe, because of this mixture of the modes, it is full of pain and misery, and the goal is to become detached or disintegrated or disintermingled with the Prakriti. So we go to slide 19. Is this my last slide? Yeah, this is the last slide. That's it. So the process of, let's see, did I miss something? Sorry, I got to really stick to my notes, otherwise I'll lose it. Yes. Okay. So this is the last thing. My last point is the concept of God. From the Sankhya Karika, which is the earliest available text of the Nirishvara Sankhya, it doesn't discuss the existence of God. So therefore, because there's an absence of a reference to God, the early followers of Sankhya philosophy, they concluded that they should not accept the existence of God. Why? Because they give this reason that God is eternal and immutable, whereas Prakriti is also eternal, but it's ever-changing, and it's also unconscious. So there's no need for a God. However, later, at least sections of Sankhya philosophers, they were persuaded that they had to accept the existence of God, because in debates they found it very difficult to explain the creation without including Ishvara, without including a creator or a supreme being, because there's a logical weakness. One is that there's the belief that there are many unlimited Purushas, but there's only one Prakriti. So if that's true, if there's only one Prakriti and many Purushas, well, think about it. Okay, let's say if there's only one Purusha, and one Purusha made the decision for all the other Purushas together, that would imply that that one Purusha inspired Prakriti to manifest itself. So, and if there's only one Purusha that inspired Prakriti to do that, then it would have been against the wishes of all the other Purushas, because why would you want to inspire Prakriti to include birth, death, old age, and disease, so much suffering, I mean, why would we accept one Purusha that would do that? Why would one Purusha desire everyone else to suffer? So that's one fallacy. And the other one is that if all the Purushas together decided that they're going to inspire Prakriti to do this, to create, then there must have been some sort of communication and agreement amongst all the Purushas to inspire Prakriti. But if that happened, then where is this cosmic meeting? When did it happen? Where's the record? Where's the proof for that? It doesn't exist. So therefore, there must be one Purusha, and that Purusha is the Supreme Purusha, and that is the Supreme Being who guides Prakriti independently from the others. So at least that much they have to accept. So the conclusion, in conclusion of all this, is that there's actually more things in Sankhya, non-theistic Sankhya, more things in common with Devaki Putra Sankhya than there's not. But because they miss the main point, it becomes useless. It doesn't go to the ultimate end or the cause of all causes. So the best description is not really, in the present context, atheistic Sankhya, but rather it's near Ishvara, or non-theistic Sankhya. And non-theistic Sankhya can only bring you to a certain point. But we need to know where people are at, where their understanding is. Some naturally have different versions of these philosophies, these darshans, and we need to recognize that and therefore be able to guide them further. So that was my presentation of non-theistic Sankhya. A lot of chat going on. I don't know how much I'm going to be able to answer because, this is the best I can do about this, my understanding of it. Now I'm going to unmute everybody. And I can really go through all of the chat because it'll be too distracting. But anybody want to bring up points and I can try and answer as best as I can?
You didn't mention evolution.
Oh, that was because I was thinking that, it's a lot of philosophy to go through, and we already covered it really well in the previous chapters of the third canto. So it's almost the same, except they start from the point of the gunas, and then they go from there. They don't go back farther as far as a cause. But the same manifestation of earth, fire, water, area, it's all there, it's the same. So I just avoided it, so it wouldn't be too lengthy.
Okay.
My main question for you guys is, when we went over cause and effect, did I lose you, or were you able to follow the points? Why understanding what is the cause and what is the effect is so important, central to our philosophy, the basis of our philosophy. Okay. Okay.
I thought it was pretty far out.
Was it understandable?
Yeah. It was like, wow, you really got into it.
Okay.
The pictures and the,
Were you able to follow why one argument builds upon another till you get to the conclusion?
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Fine.
Is this in the newsletter?
I haven't. Right now in the newsletter, I've only started Nyaya, logic. It's got because you can only present one or 2 points, otherwise, just people get lost. How much can you put in a newsletter? So it's just I present 1 or 2 points at a time, and we're starting off on Nyaya. It'll be a while before we get to Sankhya and beyond.
Where'd you get all this information?
I was interested by reading what Sahotra Swami put together. The way he writes is very compact, and a little hard to consume, so you need to go to other sources, and then you go back, and then you can understand what he's saying. But I like keeping Sahotra Swami's booklet on this as a basis, because it's Vaishnava philosophy there. So you don't get off track. You understand where it is from our perspective, how it relates to us, and where the misinterpretations were, and how it was misled other people. Different philosophers use the Sadarshans for their own purposes, and now it's completely in a perverted form.
In Prabhupada's books, it's kind of very simplistic, and that's all I've ever really understood. And I'm even a little confused because it's mentioned that Sankhya, which means the breakdown or counting, literally, I think Sankhya literally means to count, breaks. Prabhupada mentions that the atheistic philosophy of Sankhya breaks the material nature down into 24 different elements. And then, this is where I'm a little bit confused, then I also read that it was the theistic that adds the soul, the 25th, and then later it's mentioned, I know I read it somewhere because I wrote it down in Prabhupada's books, later the 26th, which is a super soul, was added. Mm-hmm. Do you know how all that comes into play?
Well, I can only tell you what I understood from the research that I did, that their conception of the Purusha is not exactly a jiva. It's the conscious being. He's eternal, so a lot of the properties are there, but because they don't recognize an Ishvara, they don't know what its source is or what its real nature is. So what to speak of the super soul, that just it's not part of their philosophy.
Well, my understanding was that when you got to the 25th and 26th, which is where I'm a little bit fuzzy, that was the theistic.
Right.
Or maybe later theists added onto it. I don't know. I'm asking the question because I'm not clear.
What I understood is that near Ishvara, that was subtracted. Somehow or other, it was omitted. I don't know subtracted, it was omitted from the Sankhya Sutras. Or it was lost in time.
Sounds like yada hi dharmasya glani bhaviti bharata. It's like in the Gita, Krishna says, there's a breakdown. From time to time, it breaks. The philosophy, the theism breaks down.
Yeah, it's like you get part of it, but you don't get the whole thing, and then it doesn't make sense. It's kind of like Ayurveda. Ayurveda, most of it's lost. It's like you just got a small little fraction. There's very little you can do with it nowadays. So it's the same way with these Sadarshans. They're in their broken, perverted forms. But at the same time, there's a lot of thing in there you can still use. Even with Ayurveda, there's, it's, in a lot of ways, it's better than Western medicine, which is just hit or miss speculation, and you find out years later you just poison yourself. At least with Ayurveda, you're not going to kill yourself. So it's kind of like these philosophies here. They come from the Veda in their broken, perverted form. And, if you're exposed to the Bhagavatam, then you can see what's, actually you can use. There's things that make sense there. At least that's what I found.
Yeah, I agree. From the Bhagavatam, you can understand it, and there's so much you can use all day long. I find myself more and more all day long applying the philosophy to deal with Prakriti, to deal with being in this material world.
I wanted to do this presentation because we're just about to leave the third canto. We just went through all of Lord Kapila Dev's presentation of Sankhya in the Bhagavatam. And I wanted to know, did you feel this was of value, or maybe really necessary to understand the difference between non-theistic and theistic Sankhya? You don't have to sugarcoat it.
No, my opinion is that a lot of times I read things in the Bhagavatam, even things that Prabhupada wrote, that I don't, especially things that Bhaktisiddhanta wrote, which I really don't confess, I really don't understand, but it's helpful just to hear it, to know that, wow, there's so much there. And I've got such a little pea-sized brain that though I can't understand it, it's nice to know that it's there and somebody understands it. I just embrace what I can understand, but it is helpful to hear it, even though I don't fully understand it. Like we'll read it, the fifth canto, and boy, so much of it's so far beyond me, descriptions of the universe, etc., etc. But hearing it, even if I don't understand it, I know I'm getting purified by it, and just knowing it's there, that somebody understands it, I just kind of stick with the basics from my own brain. But no, it's helpful to hear it, and I liked your presentation, though I didn't fully understand everything.
Hare Krishna.
Actually, Douglas wanted to say something.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, I'll wait.
Yeah, the Sanskrit was kind of throwing me. My approach would be, Gopa said this at one of our meetings. If a 12-year-old can't understand it, then he's not interested. So to get into so much technicality, I liked your image. Some of your pictures I liked very much, but I would like to see it, and for lack of a better term, dumbed down or simplified, and maybe even like I don't think there's a necessity for getting into all the Sanskrit terms and all those details. That sort of makes it hard to digest, unless somebody's, this is like a thesis. This is like somebody going to a college and learning, another language or something. That's, anyway, just some impressions.
Okay, thank you. What did you want to say, Iglarasa?
Just very quickly, because Guru Puja is going to start soon. But anyway, I just wanted to, I appreciated really that you brought that up, those six sandarshanas, because it's, right, sorry, because, especially because Prabhupada mentioned this in the beginning of the Bhagavatam, and it's like it was really missed, at least by me, and I never heard it, anybody bring it up, why we shouldn't sit on Vyasa-san if we can't very well be conversed in those six sadarshans. So, and then it's, of course, it's very nice that you explained that it's the natural, it means that we wouldn't be able to preach to people if we don't really know them, because it's a natural state of development of consciousness, and it appears anyway in the world in any time. It's nothing like artificial, some dry philosophy that we have to know. It's just simply we wouldn't know where the person is at. It's for us to know, it's easier to spot where the person is at and start from there preaching to them. I think it's incredibly value because we already doing, some of the preachers already doing that intuitively. We feel where the person is. Can we talk about Bhagavan, or we can talk only about Brahman or Paramatma to them, because they can't comprehend, we can just digest the higher levels. But those 6 darshanas absolutely makes, when you study them, you actually immediately spot where they are and what kind of thinking they have, what mentality they have, and you talk to them from that point. So I think it's a big value, and now I understand why Prabhupada mentioned that. So thank you for bringing this all, And I didn't read all the newsletters, but, I will make sure I will, because you put a lot of time in that. Anyway, thank you.
Also, I'm dealing with some of this in Gita that I'm working on, but it's in, the 24 elements, Shankya. It's a very short presentation, and it's visual. So, but I'm not getting into the minutia, or I'm not burdening people with Sanskrit.
Okay, well then we can just dumb it down and say that if somebody says, no, everything comes from nothing. There's no cause, ultimate cause. It's just, it just happens. Now that's a philosophy.
Right.
Almost a lot of people, you have that philosophy. So that you can go with them. You don't have to introduce all the Sanskrit terms, but the point is, how can you get something from nothing? If the cause,
right, and Prabhupada would defeat these philosophies. He would bring up those kinds of questions, and he would just dismiss those are not intelligent conclusions. And then bring out. Prabhupada was more into bringing out the right conclusion, and then if there were enough people that had a different opinion, he would deal with it.
Right. Yeah. You don't need to bring up what's parinamavad, what's asat, what is sat, all those things, but you do have to we need to relate to people on their own level.
Right.
Whatever their philosophy is. It's amazing how when you start to preach to people, then you start to really understand what their philosophy is, and a lot of it's covered by voidism. They think that you get something from nothing. Cause
a lot of people are totally unconscious about what their beliefs are. They're actually, a lot of people are programmed by things around them, and they don't think deeply about it. They're not. Most people are not. Everybody has a philosophy. Everybody has a value system. Everybody has their beliefs, but a lot of times they're not understanding where they're coming from or how it works.
Okay, well, thank you, Prabhus, for listening. I thought it was worth at least trying to do this before we leave Sankhya and move on to the 4th canto. So,
yeah, I found parts of it interesting. I thought it was interesting.
It was definitely valuable. Again, I confess I didn't understand a lot, but valuable and purifying to hear it.
Okay. Thank you, Prabhus. All glories to Srimad-Bhagavatam. All glories to Srila Prabhupada.
Thank you, Prabhu. Everybody tomorrow. Adibo.
Adibo.